Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Syed Murtaza Jafri. I'm the research manager here at MAGNiTT. And today we're here to talk about venture capital investment in gaming. I'm very honored to have Tarek Fouad, a partner, Shorooq. He will be our guide as we delve into the world of gaming. The way we're going to have this session is that firstly, I'm going to walk you through MAGNiTT's presentation on Turkey versus MENA gaming investments. And then we will move to a session where Tarek who's been very kind and generous with his time, will answer some of my questions through a fireside chat format. And you can also posit questions in the comment section, and we'll try to get to those as well. So thank you so much for attending on a busy Thursday afternoon. I'm really excited to get going. So firstly, why does this sector matter? So gaming venture investments, gaming is something that we all do and love, but it's also a massive, massive investment that the ecosystem has made when it comes to about $1.2 billion of capital have flowed in here. That's very, very exciting. And we see that there's a lot more potential here. The demographics we see, both MENA and Turkey combined, over 600 million people were under age of 25. And that's what makes gaming exciting because young people like the game. And there's a lot of potential for investments. We're seeing a lot of investment activity happening in the space, and it's continuously growing at quite a rocket ship rate. And that appetite is driven by global trends. So it's over a $200 billion market. Some say 400, 500 billion, depending what you have. But the truth is people love the game. Investors and startups as well are really excited by this, and they want to encapsulate. And the other thing about gaming, which makes it relatively unique, it is borderless. You can play games like Candy Crush here in the UAE or the United States or Africa or anywhere else. It transcends boundaries. So it's like a very highly scalable. You get the right game, it's intense competition, but it's very, very easy. It's not easy, but it's not addressable to scale versus having to localize your products like a more B2C and other B2C offerings. The second element around it is the regional venture dynamics, is you're seeing as entry of international players also coming to the region to invest in gaming. So you have guys like Zynga who made investments in the region who with with Green Games. You also seen Tamatum bringing guys like PUBG to the table. And generally speaking, they're all flowing into Turkey, whereas MENA is a lot more younger and nascent comparatively. And that's one of the things that we want to talk about, like why Turkey is so far ahead. And but the fueling of this is down to this huge population, this young growing population. You're seeing a lot of government activity. The Saudis have the Saudi Arabian government has been very supportive of gaming. PIF has invested about is going to be investing about $40 billion almost into the esports and gaming space, setting up over 250 studios, creating almost 40,000 jobs. So this is something that we're really excited about. And also the UAE has got creating a gaming center as well through other regulatory support. So this is like something that's super exciting. It's super high potential, and it's not just scalable within the region, but scalable outside the region as well. So what does it really look like, right? So at the end, you have MENA is not just one country. It's like multiple places, and Turkey is a separate country itself. Egypt, for example, would have is a lot of gamers, but not as much deep currency, deep pool in terms of dollars ARPU. We're the lowest ARPU. But on the other hand, you have places like the UAE and KSA, which are the huge opportunity sectors, where you have very high ARPUs, even more than the United States, and also already high level penetration. So people are in these markets who are active gamers who are spending. And I think that's one of the most interesting things about the potential of this space for the region. Whereas Turkey, which is a much better funded market, actually is far less than the United States or UAE or KSA. But it's got a lot of space to still grow because of internet penetration. Is still like the penetration of gaming still has a way to go. However, one of the main challenges Turkey is facing is because of the currency devaluation, the level of investment there potentially could go down, or people start questioning whether or not they'll get their money back at a certain level or rate, which is one of the things that all venture capitalists are concerned about. So let's just put the market side by side, MENA 3, KSA, UE, and Egypt versus Turkey. So you see game revenue, Turkey is much greater, but it's still comparable. Population sizes are comparable as well. And the internet users, you see MENA is actually ahead, as well as a gaming population. And in terms of average revenue per user, they're relatively similar. But when we go into a comparison snapshot of where investment is in this space, it's a very different story. So Turkey has accumulated about $1.6 billion of investments since 2018, whereas the Middle East, MENA, has done about only $60 million. That is a very big difference. And the growth rates are also very, very different, where you have almost a 263% CAGR versus a 23% CAGR. 23% CAGR sounds great, but in terms of relative grading, Middle East is far, far behind. And the level of activity is also very, very different that we've seen as well in both spaces. And potentially one of the reasons of that is actually because of exits. So when you see exit activities happening at attractive valuations, investors are much more likely to invest and they take that market seriously. So they like the positive dynamics, the growth, the average deal size are much greater, but they see an avenue to exit. So potentially speaking, the MENA investments could still be potentially undervalued. And this is a space where international investors are active. It's not one where we're seeing a huge retreat of local investors. What we're seeing is that international investors are super active in this space as well. So let's just take the 5-year snapshot and just give you one view on Turkey as a whole. One thing that's really interesting here is that in 2018, so about 5 years ago, there was only $1 million invested. There are 4 brave souls that put some cash down. So there are 4 deals that actually happened to invest $1 million in 2018. Versus now in 2022, last year too, we are almost 637 million. So it's been a very much a hockey stick. These are the charts you dream of as an investor returns. Want to see like this level of funding coming to any industry you're invested in. And the level of deals have also gone up year by year, as well as the level of funding. And you're also seeing mega deals happen there. So deals over $100 million, we saw 2 of them, one in 2021, 2022. This was thanks to Dream Games investment rounds, which raised a significant number of capital. And that's what drove a lot of the future investments we're seeing in the space and the excitement and interest in the space as well. Whereas MENA, it's been a lot slower. I mean, it's gone from $9 million to about 25 million in 5 years. So the $70 million we're talking about is respectable for a small industry, but one that has a lot more potential, as we showed it previously as earlier. And the level of deal flow has also been relatively like 8 to 10 to 20. It's been ranged for the most part. But what we're seeing now is that the bigger investors coming in, looking in this space, and also able to actually invest in long term because they see the potential of gaming in MENA, plus the fact that the currency is a lot more stable. So many of the Middle East countries we talked about, UAE and KSA, have a currency pegging situation where they're able to ensure the dollar parity remains. Whereas in places like Egypt and Turkey, which have been hit by devaluation and high inflation in some cases, they haven't had that level of uncertainty. So the macro uncertainty plays that MENA may potentially be a powerful place for these guys to invest. And then who's investing? What's really interesting here is that, as we have the venture capitalists with us on this call, what we see is that the share of venture capital has actually been going down pretty consistently in Turkey. We're seeing VCs almost withdrawing, but also we're seeing new investors come to the fore, where we have corporates, investment countries, large gaming companies coming, making investments because they see the potential to invest in like trying a few different gaming studios and then getting a share of the potential upside. Whereas in MENA, it's actually the more opposite story. So excluding 2021, we're seeing a gradual increase of venture capitalists looking at this space, potentially bored by what they're seeing in Turkey and saying that this is a place that could be very, very interesting for us. And you're seeing a lot of different angel groups of people putting down checks because this is an investment that is similar to a SaaS business in some ways, where you're trying to invest the technology and then scale with marketing if you need it or have other partnerships and avenues. So it becomes a much more interesting overall dynamic. The other thing that we've noticed here is that in Turkey, the internationals' participation was nothing in 2018. Like no one globally international was interested in it. But what we see is now that Turkey has become much bigger in terms of international participation. International investors look at Turkey and say, this is a place I want to invest in gaming. And this has consistently been going up since 2019. And this actually bodes really well on both an activity perspective and diversity. Why? Because international investors bring something else to the table, whether it's ability to collaborate across borders or expertise or different relationships that have other gaming studios to help make that ecosystem a bit better. That's something a very positive trend we've seen there. And in MENA, similarly, we're seeing international investors also coming to MENA as well, which is one of the reasons we think that gaming potentially has a very large upside. As the ecosystem gets better with more venture capitalists coming in, international players coming in, they will look to connect this ecosystem and build a bridge, not with just Turkey, but with the world. And those startups that we have, whether it's the Matum or anyone else, they will also reap those benefits in the long term. Now, where is the money gone, right? So we talk about $600 million plus, but who's been raising it? Interesting enough, Dream Games, the makers of Bolo, they have raised about $400 million of this amount, of this entire. So it's been very lopsided that there's this massive amount of capital that's been delivered by one specific player, and that's driving excitement. But if you look comparison between the 10th largest deal and the Dream Games largest deal, it's a 51x difference. So it's a super lopsided, very concentrated amount of capital that comes in. And as the ecosystem develops, this should become more distributed over time. The other thing that you note here is that if you look at the investors, where the investor based out of, the top 4 deals were all internationally driven. And 6 of the top 10 are actually all based on the same. So those mega deal rounds have been skewed, but you're seeing international investors taking the lead on the bigger chunk size deals. Where it's come to MENA, the Matam, the Jordanian startup with sorry, the Jordanian startup has raised $11 million with a share of both MENA and international investors. That's only 16x bigger than the 10th largest deal in MENA. So what we expect is that this distribution is good, but we'll see much bigger deals happening in the future as these games get scale and actually drive success. It's also one very important thing to note is that because the funding environment has not been the best in the last couple of years, despite the fact that activity in Turkey, we're going to see these guys holding off and not needing to raise, as opposed to being other companies that are forced to raise at a certain point in time because of cash flow constraints. And bring it all back to the beginning. What drives the level of investment in this space? As you see, Turkey has a lot more exits than MENA. And this is driven by the acquisition Singa's investments. They done 4 investments last year. But on an overall perspective, this industry as a whole is very healthy. So whereas e-commerce and fintech are the largest industries by exits, gaming is actually not very far behind fintech. Still the 5th largest on a MENA perspective, but it's not that far behind. So there is avenue here that will drive further investor activity to put money in this space, assuming the right ideas, the right games are being developed for the ecosystem, which I think is not a home run, but I think it's a large probability. They have a good probability of success given the infrastructure investments, the level of talent being developed here, as well as the large local regional revenue pools available to them, as well as the potential to really scale globally. Thank you so much for your time. I will now bring in our friend Tarek, who is a partner at Shorooq, to quickly please introduce himself, and then we'll ask some questions. And obviously, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we will address them as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Murtaza. I appreciate you bringing us into this. Hi, everyone. I'm Tarek Fouad, partner at Shorooq Partners. We're a $400 million AUM investment firm with venture capital funds and venture debt funds. We play in pre-seed all the way to Series A at venture capital side, and then the venture debt side, we do come in at Series B plus. We have done 180 plus investments in around 70 companies so far. Gaming has been a vertical that we've led 2 years ago with the creation of our own incubation and accelerator program called SHIP. To date, we've incubated around 270 companies from across the world. It made us obviously become fully aware about the space and understand it, but also to build this depth and knowledge in a space that is by far one that hires more technical and engineers than any other technology company you would see. So we're quite excited to be here with MAGNiTT, our partners. We're quite excited to kind of be building with everyone this beautiful industry that has been proven for many years to be resilient and to be one of a soft power across countries.
Amazing. Thank you. So question number 1, this is where it's going to get tough, Tarek. How did Turkey become such a big, powerful market in terms of gaming? And are there any lessons we learned for the rest of the region?
Absolutely. I think actually this was one of the biggest questions we were asking when we were building our way into the gaming scene. And when you study Turkey closely, you'll see that what made this entire boom of deal flow that you see organic, it's not necessarily just the exit, because the exit would only come if you got really good
Hmm.
companies being built. But it's
Hmm.
one, there is a handful, I think around 10 to 15 universities that teach game development and animation and creative art. And this, I think, without those, you wouldn't necessarily have the technical skill to actually start building something, right?
Hmm.
And when you take a look at MENA, we're kind of lagging behind in terms of the number of universities or vocational, uh, technical kind of universities that actually offer such programs, right? So
Hmm.
when you've got a lot of that talent graduating from universities, it's by virtue that they will stumble upon either working in the media or entertainment space or will start their own gaming companies in that. But you still need capital to help these talent build companies. And this is where you study Turkey again, and you'll see that there is at least 6 to 7 incubators that actually incubate ideas. There is around 13 plus accelerators that come and invest at very early stage and
Hmm.
provide that initial capital that is required for these gaming studios to develop, right? Now, most of the time when we say gaming, everybody thinks game studios, but the reality is gaming as a sector is a huge value chain. There are tools and tooling companies like the engines, like Unity and whatnot, but you also have game studios that develop content. You have game publishers who are
Hmm.
have the know-how to kind of distribute these games across. And then you've got streamers and social companies that bring everybody together. So the gaming scene is not necessarily just game studios. Obviously,
Hmm.
majority of the exits were in the gaming studios, but we see more and more technology companies coming into the gaming scene, enabling that scene to grow. So I think, in a nutshell, what kind of drove Turkey to achieve some of its major exits, where was the availability of talent and availability of initial capital, whether through venture capitalists who are understand and kind of have interest in that space, or accelerators that are game focused. And I think if you don't mind, Murtaza, there was a point that you made in your report that in a number of VCs were declining in Turkey. And I think what is happening there is a lot of VCs have started sector agnostic, right? And
Hmm.
when you've got used to seeing fintech, health tech, edtech companies, and all of a sudden you go into the entertainment tech, it's actually a very different ballgame if you do not understand how and what makes good IP and how do these gaming companies make money. You would potentially be making a lot of bets or gambling. You most probably be gambling, right? But
Hmm.
what we've learned through steady and close learning in close kind of being very close to this industry and taking very baby steps into it is that it really, really mimics a SaaS company. There is no, it's all data driven. You take steps into or towards building a great product that eventually players like to play and have fun. And I
Hmm.
think what brings kind of this element in people's mind that it's more gambling than investment is because what is fun? What is fun for Murtaza might not be fun to me. And that's true to a degree.
Hmm.
Eventually, every one of us has some sort of a player motivation in them. You might be motivated by completion. I might be motivated by challenge. Some other person might be motivated by a great social game where I connect with others, right? And I think as long as your game can speak to different personas and are designed properly for these different personas, there is a big chance that your game would be successful, at least for that thing. Right? And we can speak more about how it actually works, but we'll keep that to some other.
Absolutely. No, thank you. That was actually really informative. Um, I guess one natural question becomes, you talked about the venture capital, the talent, the accelerators. Does MENA have the right elements to catch up or surpass where Turkey has been so far? Does MENA have that capacity? And what would drive it?
Absolutely. I think MENA will eventually catch up. The question is when. And with all the government support that is happening in UAE, in KSA, with the demographics that we have, very young population that is very game savvy, right?
Mhm.
Um, what is so good about the MENA population is because we're really gamers at heart. Good gamers make good critiques. So they kind of understand what makes a good game, or at least what are different features that I would like in a game that could make up a successful IP. But also, you need to realize that there is very little IP that came out of me. Yeah, we today play most games that come from Western culture or Asia, right? But or far Asia, but nothing necessarily from the Middle East per se. And I think the global audience or the global player is quite hungry for new IP that is going to come from here, new cultures that they would open up to, and new stories that they're not necessarily bored of in that sense. And I think um, a lot of these elements bring in this potential that we
Mhm.
could catch up. Where we are lagging is in my humble opinion, are two areas. One, we came in late in towards developing talent that is technically capable of building the next wave of animations, game development, and whatnot. And remember, these are not just art. This art needs to create business. And to sell art and to make a game successful, there is the business side of games that we do not necessarily believe exists yet. So, what game balancing is, how do you actually create enough flow in the gamer at the player level to enable
Mhm.
them to stay longer? What are some of the tactical live ops campaigns that you will run to achieve success over a long time? Is a lot of it is actually exposure to good business acumen, which
Mhm.
because we do not necessarily have enough big companies here, by the virtue of it, we did not brush against, right? So that knowledge was not transferred. But eventually, if the more companies we build, the more companies come over, we will kind of get that transfer of knowledge done. And that's really what we've done in Shift. We didn't feel that the lack of technical talent is the issue. It's
Mhm.
more the lack of the business. How do you take that game and make a great business out of it and make it
Mhm.
one that is quite attractive to VC, right? So step number one, I think we need to build more universities and vocational training centers that dive
Mhm.
into the technical aspects of it. And I'm not talking about courses. I'm talking
Mhm.
about you coming out on the other end, being certified to work in any of these mega studios. Number two is obviously investing into other investors or funds or enabling initial early stage capital to actually flow, right? And
Mhm.
that does require game focused VC. Hence why at Shorooq Partners, we understood from day one, it can't be the same team that looks at fintech would actually look at him. They're with two different worlds. And to own this debt, you need to kind of dive in and to dig at how it actually all works and to stay so updated to all this content that is pushed. So the more we have gaming focused VCs or accelerators, the more that initial capital drives drives these companies. And eventually, in all honesty, KSA has been doing an amazing job attracting international brands over, right? So you have those coming into the region. UE with its also the metaverse
Mm-hmm.
strategy, and they're diving into the gaming scene as well. Eventually, we see more and more of these companies coming in, and then that talent will be placed and work in those companies. Eventually, they will step out and one day to start their own games, and the capital will be ready for them, right? So those
Amazing.
main things I think are gonna make us play catch up, and we're catching up very quickly.
Yeah, I think the education component will take a little time having universities that are focused on game, but I think that's definitely a step in the right direction. I think the capital, once people see it exists in returns and people who make great games in the region, that will also flow. But we're also seeing, like you said, in cases, massive investments that are happening, whether it's the kingdom's own acquisitions or companies setting up there or the massive esports industry. That's definitely something that will definitely help propel MENA forward, I think, as a perspective, but also having the right kind of investors who understand the space and the right kind of accelerators who know what it takes as you develop and bridge the down and build those global bridges that we talked about to help develop and transfer that knowledge you mentioned earlier. There are a couple of questions we've gotten from our audience. Rawan Al Rashid has asked a question about defining the different verticals and subsectors within the gaming industry. I mean, people talk about gaming studios, as you mentioned earlier so eloquently, but nothing around the wider ecosystem. Could you just do a double click on that for us a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question because that's actually one that we're quite we're quite vocal about. So when we talk about gaming, we can in large maybe look at gaming under maybe three or four categories, right? Or buckets. There is the game studio vertical, and that's really companies that develop games. So they create the IP, they create the animations, they code it, and they create the initial game, right? That initial game, you can think about it, you can draw parallels to it in the film industry or the TV industry. You
Mm-hmm.
create a series, that series could have 10 episodes, and then you need to give that IP to someone, right? Someone who could then publish it or put it in a platform. And this is
Mm-hmm.
where the second vertical comes, game publishers. And game
Mm-hmm.
publishers are those who support game studios in putting the game out in different markets. Their role and their know-how is predominantly in attracting players, making them stay longer, helping companies to reach the different geographies that might need localization. So if you
Mm-hmm.
will publish a game or you want your game to be open to the KSA market, maybe you need to edit the game slightly to make it more localized compared to, let's say, you've published it in China. So a lot of this know-how, usually game publishers come in. They don't necessarily develop, although a lot of publishers are game developers themselves as well, and they could support the game studio in developing the game further, right? Through all the tests and expanding, obviously a lot of this data has been shared, and then from that data they could devise what might be the next 10, 20, 30 different levels that we could create
Mm-hmm.
into the game, right? That's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
second bucket. And unfortunately, in the Middle East, we do not have enough publishers. We do not have enough of those who understand how to put games out in front of people, right? But we
Mm-hmm.
also have a lack of payment, right? Fintech. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave that to maybe another question. But staying
Mm-hmm.
into the verticals, the
Mm-hmm.
third vertical is tooling. Tooling is nothing but software that enable game studios and publishers to do their work. So that could be engines, it could be AI software that maybe helps developers create animation faster. You have hardware tools that enable you to capture motion technology, right? So all the fighting and combat scenes in a game are all captured through hardware, goes into your computer, and then you can edit those. It's the exact same tools that fuel the film industry all has been built for the gaming industry, right? So
Hmm.
gaming industry, hence why it's larger than film, because it actually initiated all these amazing graphics around. So that vertical is also a separate vertical altogether. This involves data analytics, involves live ops software, a lot of different other software that enable companies to be more efficient. And then the last vertical is the
Hmm.
vertical that kind of gets everybody together. That's streaming and social, right?
Hmm.
So think Twitch, think
Hmm.
Discord, think YouTube games if you want to put it that way. All of these are platforms that enable companies and players to come together. Think esports companies, right? They throw in massive
Hmm.
events where competitive sports, esports come in, and obviously that helps the game to be seen globally and for more people to know about it and what. So this is kind of, in a nutshell, the value chain for the gaming industry,
Hmm.
excluding other types of games like the non-Sharia compliant games. But these are
Hmm.
also part of the gaming industry, right? But they have a very different value chain.
Yeah,
Hopefully that
absolutely.
answers the question. And the reason why nobody talks about it is because all the other parts are not necessarily as attractive as a game studio, right? Everybody plays the games, that hence why it doesn't necessarily come to anyone's mind to talk about the
Hmm.
other vertical.
Absolutely. But I think the four are very, very clear. The developers, number two, the publishers. Three, you have like essentially the tooling or the software, hardware providers, and four, the streaming distribution services that you have involved. I think they're all one of those, the value chain has to work really in sync. And perhaps for this region, the question is how you localize or bring global players here or invest in local startups exploring the space to make the overall gains more powerful and get a wider reach. I think that part is like super clear. The second question we just got is from Fahd. We talked a little bit about, I think, the support that Saudi and UAE is giving to their gaming communities and developers, investors. His question was that are there any insights on government support towards gaming startups in Turkey? And he's heard that Turkish government covers the commission fees charged by app play stores and is allowing local investors to go international. Do you have any insights on this?
I'm not necessarily sure about how much commission fee they charge. I know that they do support. I don't necessarily have insights there specifically. All I know is that a lot of that government support is no longer the main driver for the Turkish
Hmm.
market. A lot of it is actually driven through private sector.
Hmm.
Probably initially, one of the insights is obviously the taxation system is quite favorable for the entertainment space. But I know
Hmm.
Saudi has already, and including UAE, have very favorable taxation systems there in the
Hmm.
entertainment sector. And Cyprus is also another example. They all kind of learn from each other. I know they had subsidies and they did cover kind of like rebates,
Hmm.
salary rebates for those who kind of established presence in Turkey.
Hmm.
But most of the support that the Turkish government had put was into universities and into kind of enabling the accelerators to come in. So majority of those accelerators had the government as host. And I think that kind of spurred the created that fire. But
Hmm.
then towards it kind of
So I think the government started early with some rebates, some sort of incentives, but then once the private sector got
fund of fund
involved, it's
type of
like
structure. Exactly. Yeah.
let's just hand it over to the guys who are experts in the space and let them develop the space so the government can go focus on another industry that perhaps might need support. That's sort of
Absolutely.
really interesting. We also had another question from Juan again. He's asking the difference between investing in gaming studios and the game itself. Who owns the IP and what are the different ways of monetization?
Yeah, so the game studios develop different games, so or different IP. So a game studio can develop Royal Match and Candy Crush, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Each one of them is a game, or each one of them is an IP. Usually, the IP is owned by the game studio and stays
Hmm.
owned by the game studio. Now, the IP gets transferred, or at least the rights for the IP to be used to the publisher, who then can and enables the
Mhm.
publisher to do more stuff on the IP itself to make it grow, right? Now, if you
Mhm.
do self-publish as a game studio, you don't need to do that. But the IP is owned by the creator, the main creator, which in this case is the game studio. Right? Now, the different
Okay.
ways of monetization are different tactics, but you could be a premium game, which is pay to play. You go to the store, you pay $10, $50, whatever it is, and then you get the game, right? Simple. There is no monetization inside the game. Once you get the game, it's there installed on your console, PC, or mobile, and you're done. Now,
Mhm.
you could free to play games, which is another way of playing games and monetizing games. You download the game for free, whether on any of these platforms, but then the monetization of the game happens in app, right, or in game. And as you unlock levels, as levels get difficulty or you lose resources, there
Mhm.
are a lot of chances where you might want to pay a little bit extra to get additional power or to unlock something you really want,
Mhm.
like expressing oneself through avatars and skins and all these tactics. And we've seen it in many games. In fact, majority of games today are free to play for that reason, right? So
Mhm.
it is another way of monetizing. And then finally, there is um, owning, which is kind of takes us into Web3 games, where not only I vote things inside the game, but I also own it. And by owning a piece of the game, I could choose later down the line to sell it off. And this is where Web3 games come into handy, and crypto and blockchain, right? So those are kind of in a large
Mhm.
brackets how gaming companies make money.
And what
Advertising is a
about,
big
yeah.
chunk of it as
Yep.
well, but I'm not a big fan of advertising. But advertising is absolutely, majority of the money of those who don't want to spend the money will have to see
Mhm.
an ad, and then that ad obviously does not the money does not necessarily come from the player, but the money
Mhm.
comes from the advertiser.
And I think one other interesting thing I've seen some examples of if companies, non-gaming companies sponsoring games as well, whether guys like Sprite or whether or not they have their own games they want to like promote as well, sometimes for an event. But there are definitely co-branding opportunities that are pretty, this is very potentially also very lucrative as well.
Yeah, in-game advertising is actually today a very hot topic. There are a few startups globally that are enabling a very native advertising
Mhm.
experience in the game.
Mhm.
So you don't necessarily feel like it's an ad anymore, and it's just part of the experience. But for
Mhm.
that to happen, a lot of the technology needs to be improved first, and
Mhm.
for brands to be able to automatically input these, advertisements into the game seamlessly. There are some efforts, but nothing yet that has clicked at mass.
Okay, very good. We have another question from the audience. How is AI, which is everyone's favorite topic nowadays, how is AI impacting gaming and what should we be looking out for? I would argue that
So
AI exists in gaming because I have to fight bots all the time.
exactly right. So this is where AI started in games. It is in NPC, right? So NPCs today are, thanks to AI, are a whole lot more smarter in the sense that they used to do one specific task in the game, but today, depending on your gameplay and your
Hmm.
mechanics and what is happening in the game, they could choose to do something else. They would have the
Hmm.
power to do something else. So NPCs now could interact. There are games today where you can talk directly to the NPC, and
Hmm.
you can ask the NPC any question you would want. And obviously, through AI, it drafts
Hmm.
questions. Now, a lot of the answers seem like textbook answers today, but
Hmm.
as it goes and contextual AI comes in, they would have more empathy. They could actually also give out emotions in a sense, and the graphics of the AI themselves could actually change. So they are becoming smarter. But we see also AI playing a role in, sticking to the same theme of in-game changes, but
Mm-hmm.
boss. So games where you need to come to a boss fight, bosses would kind of know your pattern. Most
Mm-hmm.
bosses fights were pattern based. So once you, as a player, know the pattern, eventually through maybe trials, you will end up finishing that boss level. Now imagine a
Mm-hmm.
boss that doesn't have a pattern, right? Once you kind of get a sense of, okay, AI sense that you've understood the pattern, or you're smarter, or you kind of have more brain hand coordination, it kind of makes it a lot more difficult for you, or maybe eases it. So depending on what the game studio would like it to happen, right? If we want to make your life harder, we'll make it harder. If we want it easier, we'll make it easier. And I think what kind of keeps what balances all of this is what keeps you in this state of flow, right?
Mm-hmm.
The what we call there's a very nice word, very nice statement to it. I'll remember. I'll get the few words out. Um,
Okay.
but it's that state of flow is so important for retention, right? Now AI
Mm-hmm.
is also coming in game development, so making game development faster. Today,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, everybody has at least played around with ChatGPT and or Midjourney, so created their own images. Now there are a lot of AI tools that go into creating, you know, bits
Mm-hmm.
and pieces of graphics, right? That ends up, saving a lot of time and effort from the game developers themselves. AI is going into music, so adaptable music is part of gameplay, right? How does the music change as the emotions and the difficulty in the game change, right? And a lot of that is controlled in AI. So really, AI is going into every single element of game development,
Mm-hmm.
and also data analytics, and kind of making it smarter to reach to audiences through changing graphics and campaigns automatically without the intervention of a human being, right? So a lot to look out for, hence why everybody is quite excited.
No, no, absolutely. It's really interesting. Also, the interesting thing is that if AI gets scale in this space, making games, the cost to produce games will actually go down as well. And perhaps you see a lot more different kind, more niche games coming out that can then attract global audiences, or all you call the Netflix effect, where you're able to get a much wider audience to very niche products.
So yes, I'm just afraid if it's generative AI, it
Mm-hmm.
will end up creating copies eventually that does not necessarily end up with a unique situation. So I think it's one of the industries where AI will come in to help support, but the creativity and a lot of the new ideas will be spun out through a mix of both humans coming in
Mm-hmm.
and AI is coming in, but it will certainly cut production costs.
Okay, very good. Uh, so as a VC, and this is a general question, not just how Shorooq does it, but how do you evaluate deals in this space? Like, what do you look for? Like, is it unit economics, business model? Like, what is that you look for as when you're looking at potential investment?
So one, we want to see a team that has at least got their hands dirty building a game, right?
Hmm.
So we definitely, or at least definitely, what VCs look for is a team that has had experience shipping a product. This could be mobile, console, or PC, whatever it is that you are building to, right? Number
Hmm.
two is game economy. So game economy is nothing but how do you make money inside the game, and what are the triggers, the motivations that are built inside the game that enables for that to happen, right? and how effective these triggers are. Are they triggered in the right time? Are
Mm-hmm.
these triggers designed right? Is the game economy, which is maybe what you're saying, unit economics, but unit economics is even bigger. The unit
Mm-hmm.
economics could be across the company, but inside a specific IP or game economy needs to be positive, right? So
Mm-hmm.
depending on what you give as resources, what you take as resources, that difference needs to be positive. And there are many ways for us to study it. We also
Mm-hmm.
want to see a game design document, which kind of covers almost everything, right? So from characters to the mechanics to what are the different levels of that? What's the story, right? Now, not every
Mm-hmm.
game has a story, and not every story has what's called a game lore, which is a backstory to the story.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of great movies have great stories, but not necessarily deep lore, and not every great lore has a great story. So you
Mm-hmm.
need to be able to, as a founder, describe what is so unique about your story, if it's a story based or story mode based mode game. If
Mm-hmm.
you do not have a story, then whatever that game that you're creating needs to have something you need about it. This could be creative art direction. It could
Mm-hmm.
be new monetization tactics. It could be that you have defensible moat across
Mm-hmm.
number of users. You have maybe a better way to publish this game. There has to be something defensible, right? About
Mm-hmm.
it can't be yet another match and merger game. There must be something unique about it that gets it to where it needs to be, right? So theme, uniqueness in terms of art direction, game
Mm-hmm.
design, which is all captured in the game design document, and then finally monetization or tactics and how
Mm-hmm.
effective these are
Absolutely.
as it progresses, or if you're in PC games or mobile games, you would obviously also have at some point alpha and beta testing results,
Mm-hmm.
and these results showcase retention figures, showcase, at least for a subset of people,
Mm-hmm.
how many of them stayed for day one, how many of them stayed in day seven, day 30, and so on and so forth, right?
Absolutely. Well, that's really interesting, especially around the game design document. I think we look at games and we don't realize how much work goes into them and how they're actual businesses. And I call it unit economics, that's obviously much wider, but understanding how the game economy works, like how they monetize, when they monetize, what triggers they're pulling, that becomes like really critical. And perhaps that's also part of the expertise that, accelerators and VCs, other gaming companies bring to the table to teach that, yes, you made a great game, but if it doesn't make money, it's not, it's a hobby, it's not a
Exactly,
business.
exactly.
So we have another question from the audience. They're asking specifically KSA and UAE gamers have a very high level of spend. What's your view on that? Like, why is that the case? Like, is this, I mean, why do they spend so much on games?
Um, I mean, we're a young crowd that does have, or at least entertainment, it plays a big role into as part of our lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
There is obviously a much affluent um, our higher GDP per capita that
Mm-hmm.
enables for an extra $20 here, an extra $5 there.
Mm-hmm.
Most family households not necessarily would only have smartphones, which is very high penetration across UAE and KSA, but also they would have one console at home, right? This could be Nintendo, this could be PS5 at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you might even have it, right? So I can tell you that it's a kind of a lifestyle that over many years, due to the internet penetration, due to the young population, which by the way, average player or average gamer is around 35 years old. It's not necessarily
Wow.
that young, right? So those who are spending in game are actually in their prime time of spending and have all the control to spend. Now they don't only do it for themselves, but they also do it for their kids. Um, so so I can say probably that is kind of what is driving why we're spending that much into games. But in all fairness, we're not necessarily spending as maybe other markets, right? So US or China or for that sake, Korea, there maybe our tools are lower, but the frequency at which they spend is higher.
Hmm.
And just by the virtue of more games and more IP being published, right? So
Hmm.
so I think we're okay. I don't want to position ourselves as the only people who are spending in gaming. That's not so true.
Okay, thank you so much for that. We have another question from the audience. Moz, last question. What does the president's footprint of major global gaming studios look like in MENA? And are there any insights on how they're impacting the development of regional gaming startups from an in-game monetization, quality of software, or graphics or talent standard perspective?
It's a very interesting question. So a lot of the international major gaming players think Riot Games, think
Hmm.
Crafton, think We Made, Netmarble.
Hmm.
A lot of them have established presence in the Middle East.
Hmm.
And some have created companies internally, or sorry, teams in the region. Some purely focus on publishing their own games, right?
Hmm.
So their majority of the time, these are publishing offices that support pushing the game into the market rather
Hmm.
than developing it. And it goes back to a very simple problem, right? Developing does require the technical skill. And also, if I can get it cheaper somewhere else, why do it in the UAE or Kenya, right? So obviously, we can all understand from a business perspective, why would that be the decision? But a lot of them have taken into consideration building talent from the Middle East. So many of them have partnered up with us on the business side through the SHIFT program. Many have established their own kind of um, programs where they would take in and intern, get people to intern, but that's
Hmm.
still a very, very nascent stage, right?
Hmm.
So are they impacting talent today? Nothing visible yet, but we know that many of them are building and are looking to build their own academy
Hmm.
and kind of get more people into this industry. Um, I don't think they would impact or they will support in transferring knowledge in game
Hmm.
monetization and what makes a good IP. Um, and we'll see that probably fast forward a few more years. I doubt it will take only a year to go or so, right? We'll probably see more of that in the next 5 years.
So now that you spoke the next 5 years, I guess I have to ask the question, this is an opportune time. What is it about the future of gaming in the region that excites you?
Oh, there's a lot that excites me. So, this region is full of culture and story and and a young population that is just hungry to drive industry forward. It is prime time. I think it's the Middle East time to put out these stories to the world. Just like we've consumed stories from elsewhere, today is the time for the world to open up to stories from the Middle East. And we have no lack of stories or culture. It's just a matter of building. There are many studios locally or regionally building with that in mind. So I'm excited about new IP that will come from the region. I'm also excited about how we're maturing up uh, in the region towards this space. So more governments are opening up to not only it being an industry that will contribute to GDP, but also remember games has always been since the early 70s, right? A soft power that governments have used to kind of export content and export entertainment to the world. And I think, with government stepping in, we'll see more accelerators, more investors into the space, and more support driven towards those who want to build great entertainment products. Right. So I'm excited about all of this, and I'm excited that we're still scratching the surface. Right. There is a long way to go, and I think the potential is only upwards from here.
Amazing. The regional IP, I think, is going to be especially powerful, particularly bringing those stories around the world. And I think the government's recognizing that across the Middle East and Turkey is going to be a massive, massive force, I think, for making it very common, around bringing the culture and transferring across the world. I have one final question for you. What
Absolutely.
is your favorite game and what do you love about it?
That's a very good question. So currently, my favorite game is Subnautica for those who play PC or console. And it's underwater world exploration, where you
Mhm.
kind of need to save a crew that went missing, and there is an alien. It's on an alien planet, so all creatures are kind of mutants in that sense, and the way you build your underwater world, does require a lot of strategy and requires a bit of creativity. But then you've got a lot of this action and adventure that happens with all these creatures and crew going missing and whatnot. It's a beautiful story. Um, kind of maybe others who play PC would know Dave the Diver. If you like underwater exploration games, well, Dave the Diver or Subnautica is an absolute not miss. Highly recommended.
I'm going to guess that you really like the water.
No, it just happens. But I because of my work, I have to play all games, regardless if I like the genre
What
or
a
not.
tough life, Tarek. What a tough life you live. Have to play
Right,
games all the time.
just
That's my
play
life.
games.
I mean, I think you're at end this call, you're gonna get like 50 job applications. Like, listen, I think I play games well too.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful industry. Beautiful.
Amazing. Tarek, this is all the time we have for today. I just want to thank you so much for being so generous and being so kind and answering all our questions. I hope the audience enjoyed the webinar and appreciate Tarek for being so open and honest and giving us such a great perspective on the industry. I genuinely believe that gaming is one of the future powerhouse industries for the region, for MENA and Turkey. And I think it has a lot of potential. And I would love to see the stories that belong to this region being taken across the world and the talent that develops it, making this their home and their base. And all those investments that governments and private companies are doing, they see this as a new future global hub for both venture investment in gaming, but also bringing the best games in the world and exporting them across the world. So with that, I thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for your time and take care. Have a great one,
Thank you,
everyone.
Murtaza. Thank you, everyone.